So I believe you guys are seeing the title slide, Evanston Rat Control. So as you can see, we have one of the rats sitting right atop a bird feeder. These guys they can climb. They can climb pretty much anything. They can swim, they can jump. They've had a very, very long time to adapt to us and in our environment and living conditions. So the main rat that we're going to be discussing, the main one that we're dealing with up in this region is the Norway rat. The Norway rat prefers to live outdoors. They prefer to burrow underground. And a lot of the time, the entrances to those burrows are located around the foundation of exterior walls, whether it's your house or garage or your shed. And then they also like to have the burrows essentially somewhere where it's protected. It could be underneath wood piles or overgrown vegetation, underneath a dumpster, right next to a dumpster, anywhere that can be sort of concealed. And chances are, if you see one burrow, there's more than likely going to be at least one, if not two other ones. And that's because this little diagram shows you have on the right side, you have the entrance, and then they have their little nest in the beginning, in the middle, and then there's always an escape hole, either one or two. So if they feel danger coming in the entrance, they can just bolt out the other way. And a lot of times those escape holes are covered in dirt, leaves, grass, anything that can sort of make it a little bit more hidden. And then this is also a picture of a very, very elaborate burrow system underground. This is not in Evanston. I forgot where this is. But this is, every single circle is a burrow entrance. And I believe there's 20 different burrows all connected underground. So they can be quite elaborate underneath where we're sitting and standing and eating. So the Norway rat, I know that's a picture of a mouse, but it's an adorable picture. The Norway rat needs very little water each day. They only need 1 to 2 ounces of water. Food, even less. They just need 0.5 to 1 ounce of food each day, and they will pretty much eat anything. They are not opposed to going through trash cans, eating anything, eating our pet feces that we have left out in our backyard. They will munch on anything. And so the weight, the typical weight of a Norway rat is around 10 to 16 ounces. So essentially it's about the same heft as a can of pop. And the general rule of thumb is, walking around your property, if you see an entrance or a hole about the size of the quarter, that is big enough for a rat to squeeze through. And I have some pictures here that we can show a little bit of examples of this. So this is one of my favorite photos. This is an actual Evanston inspector. I don't know what year this was, but they dressed up like Dick Tracy, and I mean, the box might as well just have Acme written across it, just sticking the rodenticide underneath there. But I feel this is a good example of the fact that rats have been a problem in Evanston and basically with people for a very, very long time. So our prior operations, we split the responsibility of rat abatement between health department staff and a contracted pest control operator. And it worked well in the beginning. However, over time, efficiency and communication tended to decline. And the communication declined between contractor and us, and then ultimately with the residents. And then so we started receiving a number of complaints. And just to kind of show that, this is a quick graph showing the number of complaints that we've received in the blue line per year. And then the red line is the average number of days a complaint stays open. So you would assume that once our number of requests decrease, the average number of days a request stays open would also decrease, because less requests mean there's more time to spend on each request, which means it would close faster. I know that was a mouthful, but so after seeing that, we decided to take the program in-house. We hired 2 additional staff designated solely for rat control throughout the city. They're in the field every day of the week. You've probably seen them out in the field, maybe talked to them. And since we've brought the program in-house, we've already seen a pretty vast improvement in efficiency and communication just based on pretty much the same graph. So here you can see the blue line from January of this year going up to August. The number of requests have gone up, but the average number of days that a case is open has decreased. So our efficiency has been pretty phenomenal. And this sort of stagnant period of them staying open is most likely staff getting used to new procedures, catching up on a lot of old requests. But now they've gotten in a good groove, and they are just knocking these out one by one. So our staff in the field have been doing a tremendous job. So treatment strategies. So currently we use a number of different strategies. The ones that probably mostly familiar with are our bait boxes. You'll see them in alleys, sometimes on your property. So inside the bait box is an anticoagulant, and it takes about 5 to 7 days for it to have a lethal effect after a rat ingests it. One question we always get asked is, I have pets. I'm worried about my dog being in the backyard. What if he gets into the bait box, or what if he eats a rat that had rodenticide? That is a common question, and it's a normal concern. We're concerned about our pet's health. But for every chemical, there's a thing called the LD50, which is the amount of bait that would have to be consumed in order to be a lethal dose to half of the study population. So essentially it's saying a 10-pound dog would have to eat 10 ounces of bait in order for there to be a 50% chance of that being lethal. And inside our bait boxes, it's probably about 5 to 8 ounces, and they're tamper resistant. So a pet would have to break into 3 or 4 boxes in order to get a large enough dose. And even then, if there's any sort of concern or precaution, the antidote is a simple vitamin K injection that any local veterinarian has on hand. And since I've been here, we've had only 1 incident, and it was unclear whether or not the animal actually bit the rat or anything. It was more of a precaution, which I totally understand. And then this next one is one that I'm pretty excited about. Actually, these next 2. So we're using CO2 now. One of the problems with the anticoagulant rodenticides is that, yes, they do a good job with rats. However, there is the chance for secondary poisonings. Whether it is a bird eating a rat that has consumed the rodenticide, or if it's a squirrel or chipmunk that go inside the bait box. That is not our intended targets. Unfortunately, though, that does happen from time to time. So we started looking for other treatments, and CO2 is a forced gas that is getting injected into the burrows underground. And essentially it over a couple minutes, it puts the rat to sleep, and eventually it becomes deceased. And this treatment is great because, one, it's portable. We can take it to a lot of different properties. There's any sort of restrictions. And there's little to no secondary poisonings associated with it. Because if the CO2 leaks out of the burrow, it's just in the air, and it's as long as it's an open air environment, then there's no risk pretty much at all. And it works so good that we actually are purchasing another one. So both our inspectors will be able to each have their own out in the field. So we'll be hitting them a lot quicker. And then this next one pretty much blew me away. I have pictures of all these too. I'll show you. This is a mesh liner. It's a woven stainless steel mesh that gets installed in a flower bed, a planter, anything like that, that does not allow the rats to burrow through. But it still lets plant roots grow through it somehow, but the burrows, they just can't be made. We recently installed the mesh liner in a planter that was always a trouble spot. And it's been about 2.5 weeks now. I've gone there almost every morning and there's not one burrow. And this planter always gave us trouble. It's like prime real estate in an area where there's food available that we've been working with. But there's been attempts that we've seen for them to burrow into the area, but the mesh has stopped them completely. So this is a really, really exciting treatment that we're looking to install in a bunch of different planters and areas throughout the city. So those are our current treatments. The potential options that we have, you might have heard of some of these. There's a fertility rodenticide. So on the surface, this sounds like a great idea. It would be, rats eat the rodenticide and they become sterile and they can't reproduce anymore. No more rats, which sounds great, but there is just a few issues with it, especially with us in our climate. One, the bait has to be used continuously. There can't be any sort of lag in between treatment of each rat, essentially. And the formulation, it's a liquid. So it freezes in cold weather. And you couple that with its need to be used continuously, and it just wouldn't be effective because we wouldn't be able to use it long enough due to our insanely cold winters here. But that is something that we're keeping an eye on. And if the formulation becomes where they can be comprised of a solid, or the freezing temperature changes, then it is an avenue that we may go down. Another potential option is called smart boxes. Everything's smart these days, including rat boxes. So this would actually send an alert to staff if there's any activity detected inside the box. I don't know how it does this, but it's able to differentiate between a rat or a chipmunk or a squirrel somehow. I'm not sure. That's why it's a smart box. It's smarter than me. And then there's also some that can deliver a very quick lethal electric charge. So there's no rodenticide involved or anything like that. And then the smart box, it would essentially reset itself after it delivers that electric charge. So there's some moving parts involved. And the other thing is these boxes, they tend to go missing. Our bait boxes right now, we'll put them out, we'll go back there and they'll be moved or they'll be just completely missing. Sometimes our bait boxes get crushed by a garbage truck or something else. So the cost of replacing these smart bait boxes would be pretty steep. But again, this is something that we're keeping an eye on. And if costs decrease, this is something that we would definitely like to go. It would give us a lot more real-time data. And lastly, one treatment strategy that is just not going to be an option citywide. You probably have heard of it, and that's feral cats. So it sounds like it should work. Cats, they're lovable, but they are essentially killing machines. And once they get out in the wild, out in the urban environment, the thought would be they like to hunt. They can hunt and clean up the neighborhood of all the rats. However, there was a study done in Brooklyn where they had a big giant warehouse. There were 5 feral cats there was 79 days, 150 rats in that building with the 5 cats. And throughout those nearly 80 days, there were only 2 recorded kills. And what they found is that the rat number doesn't actually decrease, but the cats being present actually makes the rats be more cautious and be more stealthy, I guess. So the actual numbers don't change, but maybe we would just see them less. I don't know if that would be good enough because they would still be doing damage. And as of right now, I mean, I'll show a slide a little bit later that rats produce 5 times faster than the feral cats can actually hunt them. So as of right now, that's just not going to be an option for us. Here is one of our picture of our bait box. Tamper resistant. There's a small opening on this side and on this side. We always have our boxes have the little decal sticker on them. I believe the ones that we have now saying do not tamper, but also it says do not move, because our technicians in the field, they place the bait boxes in an area where they feel the most traffic is, whether it's rats sometimes create a runway because they like familiar areas. So our staff they can recognize a runway out in the field and then place a bait box where they deem it necessary. And this new gadget is our CO2. So this was the planter that I was talking about where we installed the mesh. Before we installed the mesh, we treated each burrow with CO2. And you see all these little red things throughout the picture, here, all those are all different burrows throughout this. And there was a whole bunch over here too. So we plug each burrow and then the gas flows through the hose into the applicator, which is then put into the burrow. And it's been working pretty great. So I'm excited about keeping that up. And then, so this is the mesh liner. So the day after we treated it with CO2, we worked with a landscaper to excavate the area. And then we had our product. The company is actually local, pretty close to Evanston. So they were actually able to come out on site and oversee the installation of this just to make sure that we are putting it in correctly. There is some edging here that gets secured right along the edges. And there's actually also a tree collar here, sort of like like a Christmas tree skirt that you have underneath your Christmas tree. That gets placed around here just so rats can't get underneath and burrow. And then put all the new mulch back on top, and it looks, just like it did, except for this little area. We noticed that these railroad ties were rotted out. So that was a good opportunity for rats to kind of squeeze in there underneath. So we had wanted to replace those just to block any entrance. And like I said, this area has been working phenomenal. So we're likely going to be installing one by one, slowly over time at different planters downtown and also throughout the whole city. So that was our treatment, and treatment's great, but it's secondary because the number one thing is education. And with education, there's also an enforcement piece to it. But education is our top priority. We do this by being in the field, talking with residents. We have ward walks every so often, which is where we meet with residents out in the neighborhood, any hot spots in that ward, and we essentially go walk the alleys with them. It's a great opportunity for residents to ask us questions, to point out things that they're seeing, point out any suggestions that they have. And it's a good way for us to educate as well, because as you'll see in just a bit, a lot of the factors that draw rats out to an area are things that may just slip our mind that we would inadvertently bring them. So it's a good opportunity for us to educate on what those factors are. Things like overflowing garbage, or a door sweep missing under a garage door or a shed, um, grass that's too tall, and a pile of wood on the ground in the backyard on the grass. That's one that usually gets people a little irked, because like, it's just wood, and I totally get it. It is. But as you saw in that other previous slide, that wood provides a shelter for their burrow to live right underneath it. So it's these little things are giving them shelter and food and water, and that's what we're trying not to do. And along with the education aspect is enforcement. There are about 18 different city codes that relate to rat contributing factors in one way or another. So this form right here on the right, this is a newly created rat inspection form. This is not an official notice of violation. So if you happen to get one of these, don't think that, oh no, I'm going to be fined or anything like that. This is essentially just our staff saying, hey, I was out in the neighborhood today and I happened to see, whichever contributing factor this was on your property, and then essentially do what you can to clean it up. Our inspector will then come back in about 2 weeks, 10 business days or so. Most of the time, these items are repaired or taken care of or cleaned up. Sometimes they're not, so then in which case we would have to issue an official notice of violation. So that's like an official warning. If we come back again for another follow-up inspection, if it's still not taken care of, then we would have the option to take the property owner to administrative adjudication, where fines could be issued. That's really not the route that we want to take. Public health, we're not in the business of making money. That's really not our main objective. We just want to provide a safe environment, a clean environment that doesn't draw any rats in. So a lot of times we work with property owners. Sometimes there's outside circumstances that can prevent a contributing factor from being corrected right away. So we're always willing to work with property owners in order to correct any sort of contributing factor. And so this is just a example of one of the educational leaflets that we'll bring with us sometimes when we do a rodent walk. Just a neighborhood rodent watch flyer with, we try and put some specific things in here, specific to that neighborhood that we've been seeing. And then just a, checklist for people to go through after they've taken a walk around their property. Keep all garbage closed, cover all food sources, pick up after your pet, repair screen doors, close any openings. All these are contributing factors. So the best thing that residents can do, we always get asked, all right, so what can we do? What can I do? Call 311. Let 311 know that, either you've seen a rat, but more importantly, let them know about contributing factors. If you are on a walk with your dog and you happen to see some overflowing garbage, just text 311 that, hey, I'm at this address and there's garbage here. It can be anonymous. It doesn't have to feel like, oh, you're tattletelling on your neighbor or fellow resident or anything like that. It's just, I feel like it's a way to have a collective ownership about each of our neighbors and each of our neighborhoods, so we can do our best to keep it clean. You can call straight 311 or the other number 847-448-4311, or you can text directly to that number. They also have their own app for Apple and Android. I have the Apple one. It works pretty good. And then also, questions, comments, concerns can be sent to us at the health department directly. Our email is here at health@cityofevanston.org. We have a lot of eyes on this email, so it will be replied to most likely in a timely fashion. But all right, so we went over a little bit of the contributing factors. We went over some treatments, and all of this is very important, especially cleaning up, because of the reproduction of rats. Their population can grow very quickly. So one litter, the average size is anywhere from 8 to 12 pups per litter. They have anywhere from 4 to 7 litters per year. So that essentially means one mating pair can make up to 32 or 84 rats in 1 year. And that's just one mating pair. So you can see how their population can just grow exponentially. And their most active breeding season is spring and fall. So that's why it really takes a community effort. This is a city problem, a community problem. So it requires community and the city working together to help get rid of this problem. So this is just a regular city block. This red dot is representing a rat burrow. So everyone on this block is keeping their property up, very well maintained, but maybe we had some overflowing garbage and rats moved in and they made themselves a little home right here. Well, the typical range that a rat travels from a burrow is anywhere from 100 to 200 feet. So that one little burrow ends up affecting all these surrounding properties. So that's why it affects essentially all of us if it's on one property. So again, try not to think of it as, oh, I'm telling on my neighbor because they have garbage sitting out, but no, it's doing a courtesy to the whole entire neighborhood. And like I said, those things can be submitted anonymously also if needed. All right, so a couple pictures. This is sort of the stuff that we look for when we do our rodent walks, when we do our rodent inspections. Not only do we look for rat activity, but we look for these sort of things that can be bringing them out. Garbage not being put in a dumpster, just thrown on the floor. Again, same thing with this, overflowing garbage, lots of stuff sitting out here. If this mattress sits out for a while, they can chew through that, get the bedding, use that as bedding either inside or bring it back to a burrow. Bird feeders. So bird feeders are great. They attract the wildlife, the birds. Evanston's a bird city now, or bird sanctuary, whichever one. But birds can be very messy. This is all bird seed on the floor. And when we're feeding the birds, a lot of times we are inadvertently feeding rats as well. So we ask that if you have bird feeders, just be mindful of them underneath and sweep up, try and clean up as much as you can, just so we're not inadvertently feeding the rats. And then open compost bins. This is some things that we see. It's just kind of begging rats to go in there and have a good Thanksgiving dinner. Ground feeding, whether it's feeding birds or feeding squirrels or chipmunks, you may not know it, but you are also feeding rats. Whether it's in your backyard, at a park, anywhere, be it a kind gesture, but you're ultimately feeding rats as well. Holes in a dumpster. This is one of the metal dumpsters that has a rusted bottom with garbage continually coming out. These can be replaced, and then also residential garbage cans. If those get holes in them, those can be replaced at no charge. I believe that there is a charge for having to replace a yard waste. I'm not entirely sure which one it is, but I know for a fact that the residential garbage container can be replaced at no charge. You just have to let 311 know. And here's just an example of a couple of burrows that we've come across. Inside planters, this one's a little blurry. See how it's sort of hidden underneath the vegetation. This one is like a burrow hotel. And this was only the some that I can fit in the camera. There was a whole bunch of other ones. So these are the ones we see. There's probably hidden ones, back over here, underneath some of this debris. Here's garage in disrepair. They can slide through underneath the door, climb through any sort of holes. Door sweep at the back of, I believe this was a restaurant. So they can easily crawl right through there. And I believe, let's see if this plays. Just kind of gives an example of that. So yeah, obviously that's bigger than a quarter. So you have these little guys essentially running in and running out and running in and running out. And this is in daylight. So just imagine nighttime. That's why it's important that, you know, if we say anything about door sweep on your garage, like, yeah, I know, I'll get to it. But essentially, the longer we wait, the more likely it is that we're inviting pests into our garage, which we don't want. All right. And lastly, so this is our number of total requests that we've received per year. We have this huge blip, 2015, right around there. Kind of dies down a little bit. COVID hits, still stays down, then it starts picking up just a little bit. The big giant blip, that I believe is when the health department started sharing heat maps. So it got a lot of exposure, and I think people just started calling in the requests a lot more than they were, which was great. And one of the interesting things around the COVID time is that the thought was, with restaurants closing, that rats would be going further away to get their food. Instead of traveling 100 feet, they'd travel 250 feet to go get some food. But what some researchers actually found out is that they were seeing, instead of traveling further distances, the rats were just going into new areas that they weren't there. So we are seeing more of an increase here. It's hard to know whether or not the actual rat population is increasing, or if it's just the same number of rats, but just going into new areas. So new people are seeing them, and new complaints are made. Either way, we'll respond to every one of them, and so just keep calling 311. And finally, here is the heat map of all of the complaints that we've received this year. And it's important to note that all right, so the red is the higher number. So the more rat requests we receive are in the red, but it's pretty much throughout the whole entire city. More so down in the southwest area of Evanston. And it's important to note that these aren't verified rat sightings. These are just requests that we've received. So these are people who saw something or heard something and then took the step to call us and let us know about it. So yes, there's a lot of activity here, which could be seen as a bad thing here, but it can also be seen as a good thing that these residents here are very active in letting us know, which is great, and that's what we want to see. So it's a kind of weird way of looking at it, but it does kind of direct our rat walks and our city rat walks as we go around the